Hello, it is Thursday. It is 5:30. That means it's time for Let's Talk Power Live, where we talk about power in education in operational ways because we know that power in education is real and instructional power is even more real. I am your host, Dr. Tangi, and it is my delight to welcome you here today. What am I thankful for? I'm thankful that my grandson is about to start second grade. I recently did a professional learning with a school, and the principal said, "Tell them about yourself." And I said, "The most important thing about me is that I have a grandson." And for all those grandparents out there, you know what it's like to be a grandparent. So that's what I'm thankful for today. And what are you thankful for today? It's always good to take a moment to be actively thankful for something. Our world is crazy, our world is a bit hectic, and being thankful kind of puts you in a place of peace. So remember, take time to be thankful. And before we move any further, I want to say thank you to all of our subscribers. It is always a pleasure to know that you trust us enough to spend this time with us. And our data continues to show that about 80% of you are still dating us. We love a good date, but we would really welcome your full-on commitment and become a subscriber. So go ahead, I'm going to say it a couple of times, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and if what we're talking about is resonating with you, please share it with someone else. And as we do every week, I let you know what are we talking about when we talk about power in education. Why do we talk about it? I already told you that, because power in education is real. But here is the definition that I share every week. Education is the instrument of democratic designs, and it is no less the instrument of power. The control of information, the shaping of understanding, and the influence of judgment are critical elements common to democratic design, power theory, and educational philosophy. That is the capital P, power in education, that comes out of David Nyberg's work. And for us to pretend that education is any different than the larger society is a falsehood. So we need to lean in and recognize that, yeah, education is just like society and there are power dynamics at work. And this is what we mean when we say instructional power. It can be understood as an educator's use of their state, district, and building ascribed job-related authority to afford or constrain a student's access to learning. And by that we mean, if you are an educator at any level and the decisions you make open access to any child or constrain access to the excellent education they deserve, you are exercising your instructional power. A couple of invitations I want to give you. First, I want to let you know we have open, here's our article that we have been really championing, particularly now as school has started. What student engagement looks like beyond compliance. We know that students are raising hands, they might look like they are participating, but what does it look like when they're doing more than what you tell them to do? QR code, link, check our website. You can find the article there as well. The other thing I want to invite you to take a look at is what is it? It is our brand new Instructional Power Collective. It is a private Facebook group where you can continue the conversation with educators and leaders exploring power, agency, and student opportunity. That is on Facebook. You can go ahead and join it. We'd love to have you. And let me know, I'm going to be offering you later on in our show our readiness bundle to help you as a leader get yourself ready and more prepared for what is happening on the federal level. And our conversation with our guest tonight is going to really prepare you for what is important these days. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of other things I want us to take a look at. Our guest tonight, y'all don't even know about what's to happen. Our guest tonight is none other than, I'm trying to get his face up here, but it's not coming out. There it is. We have Dr. Felton Moss. He is assistant professor Virginia Commonwealth University, a school board member in Prince George's County, Maryland, managing director of government relations, NSBA, former senior policy advisor for Congresswoman Frederica Wilson. And tonight we're going to talk about what school boards need to really be doing when the federal government steps back. There have been a lot of shifts underway since last year and the year before that, and Dr. Moss is going to really help us break down a lot of what's happening in this realm. And so, Dr. Moss, thank you for being here with Let's Talk Power Live. How are you today? Oh, you're muted.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. So, as we get started, one thing I want to ask you to do is just let people know what it is you do as a school board member on the National School Board Association, and then we're going to really dig into that wonderful article you just released. So go ahead and help us get to know who you are.
Yeah, so it's so good to be with you. I honor your work. I respect your work. So thankful that you are helping educators understand their power at all levels of the system. I fundamentally believe that justice is found in the details of the system. And I know that's not strange for you in your language. I may have borrowed that from you. So part of the work I do every day in my capacity as a researcher is I think about how I write about the details of justice. I research the details of justice. And then in my work with the National School Board Association, I help school board members reconcile the details, right? And it is my job each week to ensure that school board members know what's happening from both a legislative perspective and a regulatory perspective of what's happening between the Department of Education and all of its sister agencies now and Congress. And so that is the work that I do with the National School Board Association. In Prince George's County, I have the privilege of serving as vice chair of the Board of Education, and I chair policy and governance. And so, just before this call, we were responding and updating our community around the fact that we had been accused of violating Title IX as a system. And so making sure our community is aware of what we've been accused of and the way in which we're responding to the federal government. So that is what I do every day. I try to help folks understand and make sense, as much sense can be made, of what's happening in Washington, D.C.
That's so important because last week we had Dr. Bryant on, who really got us into the nuts and bolts of fine-tuning the school board's role. The week before that, we had Karin Chenoweth on, who really broke down this idea of governance and management. And hearing your role in this week, we really are excited to have you help us go the next step even further. And I know there have been real seismic shifts in the Department of Education. And hearing you say, in your role, you really have to help them, your school board members, understand those shifts. Right now, what makes this so urgent to understand?
Yeah. So first, let me say this. All the research on school board governance fails to include research or codification of a school board's member's role as an advocate beyond their board seat. So I posit that there's an aspect of my work that is advocacy at the state level and at the federal level. And so that is my posture as I do this work. I see my role as not just passing policy on the Board of Education, but being an advocate to the state and federal system around the needs of a school system. So I just wanted to set that foundation for how I see my work.
Yeah.
That being said, largely what is happening is, as you called it, a seismic shift. There is a notion of returning back to what we knew about public education in this country prior to having a Department of Education. And what do I mean by that? Part of the reason we had the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was to make up for what states could not do. And it was by and large to the fact that we had a system that was funding our education system based on property taxes. When Serrano in California argued that it violates the Equal Protection Clause to use property taxes, a movement in this country happened to have a federal counter to state action. And so what I think has happened is folks want to return back to the work that was happening pre, mid, post Civil War in terms of education, where we make this argument around localism. So we are returning back to what used to be. This idea of returning education back to the states sounds like the localism argument that was made post Civil War in terms of education, which translated to using local property taxes, which translated to a disequal system. So I think that's what's happening every day. That's what we see happening in Washington.
And how does that translate? In your new article, you said when the federal government steps back, school boards have to step up. There's a new set of tests out here that school boards have to now really dig into. And what does that mean from a power? Like, school boards have always had power, but that power has kind of been in the background.
That's right.
Now, from what you do and what others like you do, we see millions of dollars being pumped into school board elections. That was not a thing, right? It was, oh yeah, it's the school board, whatever. But we see this power dynamic shift, and school boards are now in the forefront. What does that mean? That now school boards are thrust into the spotlight in ways they have not before.
Yeah, I like to take language from our current U.S. Secretary of Education when she talks about education being needs to be closest to the children. School board members are the closest to the children in education. And while I disagree with a federal shift in education to the states and to the local system, I'll give you the best example. I just did an interview an hour ago when someone asked me about disparate impact and what does that mean? And I ended the conversation arguing that state legislatures should codify disparate impact in its existing state laws, which essentially was a provision that says we will open an investigation if we have enough data to prove that Black children are disproportionately being impacted by whatever policies the system
Are out there,
has.
right?
So that is the kind of work that I think has to trickle down. I call it equity guardrails. So everything that would have been in the Every Student Succeeds Act, I think boards got to be thoughtful about that and start codifying this stuff here. Like in Prince George's County, we codified protections for immigrant children. When ICE started going into schools, we found out what legal authority we had. And we said, no, you're not coming in our buildings unless you have an arrest warrant. Then we found out, well, because it's a school building, we can require that you speak with our general counsel before you administer an arrest warrant. So school board members really have to find their power and lean into that in this environment. From an academic standpoint, though, all of this work around ensuring there are no performance gaps, those and that, if a school is not meeting its goals, if we have supports put in place, that all was codified federally. Yeah. And it's not going to be monitored federally now. They could care less.
I know, right? Can we imagine that's not that idea? And what's interesting about it is when it was happening, there was so much pushback, folks didn't want it.
Yep.
But now that it's going to be taken away, it's like you don't miss your, water till your well is dry kind of a scenario.
Yep. I tell people all the time, I should have known I was going to be an ed policy nerd because I wrote my high school senior thesis on the No Child Left Behind Act. So I tell people all the time, growing up in rural Mississippi, had we not had NCLB that forced states to look at how I was performing in comparison to my other peers, I might have only been learning basket weaving in my rural town in Mississippi. So these protections that were codified around accountability are really important, and we're seeing a complete rollback of that. Yeah. And if they're not rolling it back, they're not monitoring. In places that they can't roll back, they're not monitoring.
And here's the thing that is really interesting to me. education seems to be one of the only places where accountability is given a bad name. So when I take my car to the dealership, I expect them to do what they say they're going to do.
Yeah.
And if they don't do it, I'm going to take my car back to them and we're going to have a different kind of conversation. Why is it that if you have to have that level of accountability in an inanimate object, that we don't want that equal accountability when people are playing inside the minds of someone else's kid?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I have been able to, I often wanted to understand folks who were anti-accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found is there are people who are just anti-accountability all around. They don't fit into this next category I'm going to describe. But there are a class of people who are anti-accountability because accountability doesn't control for the historical legacy of racism in this country.
Right.
And when you provide data that reproduces narratives about historically marginalized children, that is when they jump off. Mm-hmm. But I favor the kind of accountability that goes a step further, where I have a paper about this, where we use poverty as a proxy for race.
Yep.
Yeah. Because we understand what has happened from a systems perspective. So I favor the kind of accountability that wants to hold systems accountable for not doing the justice work of delivering on decades of inequity and decades of a disequal system. Like, that is the kind of accountability work I favor. I think where people get off is when you have conservatives who jump on this bandwagon of accountability, but do not acknowledge the history of racism that created this disequal system. And then they turn around and reject the kind of resources that are necessary. They believe that less makes you do more. And so I think there are nuances to accountability that we have to really spend our time parsing through.
I agree with that. I want to share some data points with you and get your take on them. So we have this idea, right, that federal uncertainty is already, reaching the districts with all the shifts that are going on. AASA surveyed 628 superintendents. 85% of them, across 43%, reported that federal funding contracts were being withheld. Nearly 3 in 4 said they would have to eliminate academic services. And 4 in 5 said they would reduce or eliminate professional development. How is that going to impact the quality of education? And how does that impact the governance and management of funds that school boards have to direct?
Yeah, I believe this survey was administered by AASA when the Trump administration was withholding federal funds.
Yeah.
We've worked, honestly, just last week, if you read an Ed Week article, we worked really hard not to run into that issue again this year. There's a coalition of 20 organizations. The U.S. Department of Education uses a G5 system.
Okay.
And they wanted to turn that system over to OMB or the Department of Labor, where it would have forced school districts to declare that they're not doing any DEI in their school system.
Right.
And so some of this delay was baked into that. Thankfully, we've gotten all dollars out now.
Oh, thank goodness.
So all dollars went out this year, but them agreeing not to use another system, but to use the G5 system is very temporary. So I think your question is very relevant for next academic year, because they will have had a year to build and implement this G5 system that will further strain contracts and Title II dollars. Because, I don't know if you saw the OMB rule where you had to they were creating an OMB rule that to attend the conference before you can use federal dollars for it, the U.S. Department of Education would have to approve the conference.
I saw that.
So I think that they are slowly chipping away at being able to control the things that you've laid out, contracts, professional learning. And it's going to have tremendous impact on our education systems, especially when schools have to declare that they're not doing anything related to DEI. So I think it's going to have tremendous impacts. If Title II dollars are held up, teachers can't get the professional development they need to be able to start the school year, which means kids are not ready to learn how to read, write, and count. So we've got a lot of challenges ahead of us. I think we're fine this year. That doesn't mean down the road we don't have, additional challenges with getting those dollars out.
Yeah. And just for a point of clarity, what is that G5 system?
Yeah, G5 is the grant administration system. It is how the U.S. Department of Education talks to state education agencies. That has been that system. It's where they input everything. It's where they transfer the dollars. They wanted to completely get rid of that system.
Oh, I know.
And move them over to another one.
So they wanted to take that system. I think it was agriculture or labor. They were trying to put it into this because earlier in October of last year, we did a whole statewide sort of webinar on what's happening with the shifts in the federal government. Here's something else we found out that was really important. This idea of the retreats are going to be hitting those student supports first, right? The $18.4 billion in Title I funds helps high poverty schools. 8 million children rely on the IDEA for disability related services and protections, and 70 million students are covered by federal civil rights enforcement in schools. And we both know that, particularly on that last bullet, the civil rights enforcement is really being dialed back. How should school boards begin to prepare for that possible service disruption? And how are they still protecting young people from civil rights violations if it's not going to be a top priority for enforcement? Oh, you're mute again.
I'll take a step back and just flag for you. The president has, since he's been in office, he's proposed cuts to Title I. Thankfully, Congress has rejected that every time and has given level funding to Title I. But you and I both know Title I needs more than level funding.
Exactly.
And in terms of your last bullet point around civil rights enforcement, this is going to get interesting. This is why I don't say school boards are going to be responsible for this, but I think school board members should be asking questions around, should be getting the statistical data that we would get in disparate impact around our Black and brown children being suspended at higher rates than their other peers in the system. And, all kinds of complaints that can be filed. I really believe this is where states are going to have to, because most school districts run from civil rights enforcement. They're not going to be building their own office to manage civil rights, right? Most of them are not going to be doing that. They're generally the subject of a civil rights investigation. They're generally not conducting their own.
They're not right. They don't want to do that.
So I think states are going to have to build within SEAs, an Office of Civil Rights, to be able to monitor what the LEAs are doing. If the federal government is not going to be. This is why I said it's important that state legislatures start codifying civil rights protections within existing state law, and perhaps demand that state education agencies within their state have an Office of Civil Rights that will do the work. And while you may not have a federal legal theory, there's certainly, if you put it in state law, you'll have a state legal theory and be able to hold districts accountable for not serving young people. So I really believe that's on state legislatures and state education agencies.
Okay, that makes sense.
But I think school board members should be asking questions about who's being served and who's not being served.
That's the big question, right?
Yep.
So stepping into that role, and you're right, that's something I hadn't even thought about. They're usually the subject of and not going to be the ones really actively trying to do that, which makes complete sense. And as we think about this, nearly $900 million in federal education research contracts were cut. and we can talk about whether, like you said, the money has been allocated and released. So does it include the ed research contracts as well? And at least 169 research and data contracts were reportedly terminated. Does that impact like the boards being able to get the reliable evidence they need on what students are experiencing?
Yeah, I want to go back to the research piece that you have here, because this is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because today, the Department of Education actually sent out guidance, and I have not been able to read all of it, but they referred states back to the ESSA evidence framework, and told them that they should be only adopting products that have run through randomized control trials and demonstrated positive outcomes.
Interesting.
Yeah,
And
so it
that
was
came out
really
today.
that came out today.
Okay.
And that was interesting, but it was more so around technology,
Oh, okay.
and those things. But that was a headline. And but at the same time, it runs afoul to what they've been doing. If
Right.
you're not going to invest additional research dollars in R&D, we call it R&D,
R&D, right.
research
Research
and
and
development,
development. Mm-hmm.
um, why are you telling districts to go back to the ESSA evidence framework, right? That you've got to have the highest tier, a randomized control
Right.
trial, or
Control trials. Right.
quasi-experimental after that.
Right. Right.
So I'm curious to see if the agency puts additional dollars in research and development in the areas that they care about. One of the things that I have learned in this administration that makes me aspirational, and it also makes me ticked off, the Secretary of Education gets to set priorities.
Right.
And whatever their priorities are, they can direct grants in that
That
direction.
direction. That's right.
So what I would imagine is they're going to make literacy, which they seem to be interested in, AI. So I think we're going to see research in that area be funded through through the USDOE,
Mm-hmm.
and it has to be able to contribute to this evidence framework that is already laid out in the existing law. So because when I talk to folks at Ed, which I have a monthly check-in with folks at Ed,
Yeah.
what they keep telling me is, Felton, we want you to help school boards focus on student academic outcomes.
Okay.
And so, and that we can agree on. We
Right.
can agree on
Right.
student
We
academic
want that
outcomes.
to happen.
Yep.
Exactly.
The what we can agree on, student academic outcomes. How is up for debate. So I'm wondering, based on the behavior that I saw today, with this guidance that they laid out that requires R&D funds. I mean, you can't possibly be asking people to use to use research that's not been yet produced and has not been funded. So you got to incentivize people to do
You got
that
to
research.
incentivize people, right? And we both know random control trials are not free.
No.
And we know that they are also costly from a human and time investment.
That's right.
And so, yeah, you got to put your money there, but you also have to put the time in. You've got to allow for that kind of time. And then I wonder it's great to hear that you have monthly check-ins, because that positions your school board with a lot of insider, quote unquote, insider knowledge and insider trading at baseball language, that
Mm-hmm.
you're able to really direct people in a particular way. And for those districts that don't have a person like you, right? A school board that doesn't have a person like you, how can they really begin to ramp up their knowledge so that in all of these seismic shifting back and forth, the ping pong table that we kept feeling for a while, it feels like things have settled down, but we both know chaos is key here. How can they be really prepared and use the power of their purse, the power of their management and governance to ensure that students are meeting academic outcome targets?
Yeah. So one of the things I'll say, if their school board is not a member of the National School Board Association, they should. I
Right.
send weekly updates all week. So what I know
Got it.
I send to thousands of school board members every day. I mean, I just sent an email yesterday about the need to comment on E-rate
Mm-hmm.
and requesting that school boards across the country comment on E-rate because there's a rule out there. They're engaging in the rulemaking process. And the first question is, should Congress abandon E-rate? I mean,
What's
that's the first
E-rate?
question.
What's that?
So E-rate is the federal program that we have that funds internet and broadband access in schools. And E-rate also helps negotiate a low price for certain technology products. Rural districts get a lot of E-rate money.
As they
So
should,
it's a
right?
formula grant.
Yeah, so right. So it's yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yep.
Yep.
But it's through the Federal Communications Commission, the
Mm-hmm. The
FCC.
FCC, yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I say that to say folks should be part of some membership organization where you're getting these real-time updates around how to respond to that. Secondarily, what I started at the National School Board Association this year was I launched these policy leadership cohorts. And we have one that's working on teacher workforce policy, and we have another one that's working on special education. These are 300 school board members from across the country who are being trained how to be strong advocates at the local, state, and federal level around IDEA from the special education standpoint,
Yep.
but also around teacher workforce and teacher working conditions. And so
Mm-hmm.
that is the kind of work that school board members should be investing in, how to become advocates. And we're training 300 of them how to become advocates across the country.
Yeah, and that's critical, right? So if you're a school board member, you're listening right now, you heard it. Become a member of NSBA. Go find Dr. Dia Bryant. Go find Karin Chenoweth. Talk to Dr. Felton Moss. Get the kind of information that you need. One of the things that we do here every week, that Dr. Moss, is we give power moves. And because we want what we talk about to be actionable and translatable. So I'm going to share some with you and get your take on them. So right now, power move number 1, build a board watch list. Identify the federal, state, and local shifts most likely to affect students. Track funding, staffing, civil rights, special education, literacy, student supports, AI, and data reporting changes. Revisit the list regularly with the superintendent and leadership team. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I remember we put together my first few weeks on the board right after I got elected, when President Trump got elected.
Mm-hmm.
We put together a federal task force who met each week trying to figure out how to respond to and to do exactly what you laid out here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that those task forces are still up because our heads are not spinning because of change as much, but I think this is a good power move and folks need to bring this kind of work back. And I'll just say this is the kind of stuff that I provide every day to school board members and updates. And it's easy to just move it over into
the next
whatever your tracker is.
Whatever your tracker is, right? Because we know that even though our heads are not on a swivel today, they might get back on that swivel, like you said. They're safe for now, but next school year could be something else.
Yeah.
Right? Here's the next power move. Safeguard essential student supports. Name the student-facing supports most vulnerable to disruption. Prioritize services tied to access, learning, safety, rights, and belonging. Use budget and policy decisions to protect essential supports, not just balance reductions.
Yeah, I mean, this is hitting me so hard right now. This year, we had to cut $150 million out of the budget in Prince George's County Public Schools.
Wow.
We didn't lay a single person off.
Wow.
But our language immersion programs were on the chopping block.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to make a lot of seismic shifts not to cut those programs and rethink the way we do business. Actually, where I'm going when I leave here is a board meeting where a group of parent leaders, community members got together in what's called a strategic realignment work group that I chaired. And we made recommendations to the Board of Education around everything you can do to maintain the academic, other things you could do so as not to disrupt the academic integrity of our specialty programs, our academic programs. So tonight, the administration is going to be responding to those recommendations that were made by this group. And that sounds like what this power move number 2 is.
Yeah, and just so you know, folks out there, and you heard me talk about it earlier in the year, not in the year, in our segment, we have a set of tools. I would love to share with you, Dr. Moss, that we really have put together to help leaders power through understanding their readiness. Are you ready to maintain these services? So if you're out there and you want to get a hold of these tools, number one in the chat, somewhere else, hit ready and we will get these tools out to you. We'd love to have them and support you in being ready with these power moves and other power moves. Here's the last one. Lead from evidence before the crisis. Ask what the evidence shows about student experiences, access, outcomes, and implementation. Require clear data before major decisions and clear monitoring after decisions are made. And use public meetings to build clarity and trust, not amplify confusion.
Yeah, I really appreciate this last one. This has been a priority of my colleagues and I. I can say this pretty boldly. Our school board always had something going on. And 2 years in, we've not had, this board has not had those kinds of disruptions.
That's fantastic.
We have sought to make the dais be a place where we do that thing around building clarity and trust and not try to amplify disruption between the board and the superintendent or the board and the staff. And I think that's really important. And I want to say the first two, we have what's called, every board doesn't have this, but we have what's called an academics committee. And this is the kind of work that the academics committee does. They review Dibble's data. I mean, they're getting in the weeds of Dibble's data.
Yeah.
They're looking at student experiences, outcomes, the way we're implementing our core curriculum. All of those things happen in our academics committee. So I think this is good governance. I tell people all the time, what you've laid out here is just good governance.
And that's something we want to make sure we are sharing with our folks who tune in with us every week. And so as we come to a close, I really just want to, one, thank you for being here and appreciate your perspective, your expertise. And folks, you heard it. It really is about states being the partners and school boards being connected to the right place, because when those federal shifts are made, school boards have to step up. And they have to reorient themselves to their work. It's not just about who's going to be the principal somewhere or right? It's more than that. It really is about these shifts. And going ahead and invite you to come back anytime. Would love to continue the conversation always, because there's never enough time. And I know you've got to go. But thank you so much for being here. And folks, just remember a couple of things. Number one, remember that we have our article coming out. We also have our power chats that are still underway. That's really important. They're still coming out. And lastly, want to invite you to share our Instructional Power Collective. Go join it. And as I said earlier, we want to give you our state readiness tools. You can comment readiness or message me and we will get you our state readiness checklist bundle. We also have that available for you on our website in the resources tab. And with that, want to just thank you for a wonderful time tonight, and be sure you have subscribed to the channel and you hit the like button. These last few weeks, we have talked a lot about school boards. Let us know one idea that stuck with you over these last 3 weeks. Have a great night, and we will see you next week for another issue and time period of Let's Talk Power Live.